These two guys have Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
Yes. And happy Reckless Speculation Thursday here. It's a Scoop Session Thursday. It's a Reckless Speculation Thursday with our friend Darren Doogie Wolfson from the 5 Eyewitness News Sports Department. And a reminder, okay, for the aggregators, for all the listeners, the viewers, Reckless Speculation Thursday is a safe space to float theories, ideas, okay? We entertain the premise on Reckless Speculation Thursday. And there's a couple really fun things to get into here today, Vikings related. But Doogie, tell the audience about your weight loss journey here briefly before we dive into the show.
Well, good morning, gentlemen. Always good to see you. Yeah, forget about the start of the state fair. Today is all about Reckless Speculation Thursday. Speaking of the fair, though, I need to head out there in a little bit to interview Gopher football players. It's like a game of Frogger, right? I'll be weaving, dodging, right? All sorts of people. But I'm on a mission. Need to go interview these players, then get the heck out of there to be able to go watch Vikings-Cardinals joint practice in Eagan. Well, mnfatloss.com gives me way more energy than I ever have. I began my journey on July 2nd. I will hit my stated goal back then of losing 20 to 25 pounds, doing it naturally, safely, effectively, no prepackaged foods, no counting points, heck, minimal exercise, although I love getting my steps in, but there's not a lot of exercise required. It's all about portion control, what to eat, when to eat, how to eat, chicken, turkey, shrimp, cod. I love all that stuff. Asparagus. Love my asparagus. Green beans, strawberries, blueberries. Drinking a lot of water, black coffee, getting rid of those sugary drinks. They push you in the right direction. They don't overwhelm you, but they are there for support. You can't do this journey alone, but I'll tell you this much. If I can do it, you can too. If you're interested in losing weight, mnfatloss.com. Again, mnfatloss.com. Many patients like me lose 20 to 30 pounds in about a month or two. For your free private weight loss consultation, call 763-312-7600. That's 763-312-7600. Or schedule online, mnfatloss.com. That's mnfatloss.com. Dr. Adam Schatzko, DC. Results may vary.
Judd, as we spin the wheel of potential Doogie talkers here, are we in agreement Jonathan Taylor is a new one here that we should dive into first?
Absolutely, because it is one that I've gotten questions about, and I've always assumed it was a complete non-starter. So, yes, if there is reckless speculation coupled with actually scoopage here, let's get to it.
All right, well, I do think, Judd, it is a non-starter from the Eagan point of view.
Yeah.
But that the Taylor camp would love to involve the Vikings. That the Taylor camp looks at it and says, hey, great situation there. Alexander Mattison, this is them talking. Hey, right? Like, is he ready to be the number one? My client, our guy, can have success in that offense with Justin Jefferson, with those two elite tackles, that the Taylor camp would love to see the Vikings get involved with the Colts in trade dialogue. But bottom line, I do not see a scenario where Jonathan Taylor ends up here in Minnesota.
Yeah, I am personally out of the bell cow running back business for now. I'm not saying that I wouldn't be interested again at some point, but it's like we had a long-term relationship with Adrian Peterson, had a long-term relationship with Dalvin Cook. Just kind of want to explore my running back options if I'm the Vikings here. But just in theory, what do you think the end price tag is going to be for a team that trades for Jonathan Taylor?
Well, I mean, it's not a 1. That's fine if they are seeking a 1. Who the heck is giving up a 1 for a running back that also in the same breath, you need to give a big money extension to? Like, he's eligible here for a big payday very, very soon. Same draft class, correct me if I'm wrong, Judd, as Justin Jefferson, right? The 2020 draft class.
I believe that's correct.
We talk about Justin Jefferson, the extension that will eventually come. Well, Jonathan Taylor is in the same boat. So who the heck is giving up a lot of draft capital, then on top of that, giving him a big money extension? So let's come off the 1 talk. Can they get a 2? Is a 3 more realistic? I mean, heck, the Dolphins, the Bears. I can make a case for the Buccaneers, even though I like the young running back they have. I can make a case for some other teams as well. So I believe that there is interest. I just have a hard time believing that anyone will give up a first-round pick.
And as far as the Vikings go, Doogie, that dovetails in perfectly because speaking of big contracts, the Vikings are probably in no position to be trading for guys and giving them big contracts. Not surprisingly, in the case of TJ Hockenson, Kevin Seifert pushed Kevin O'Connell a bit on this yesterday, to which Kevin said, hey, all I've ever talked to TJ about is his previous ear infection and now a stiff back that he has. But then Diane Rossini, newly of The Athletic, followed up with, yeah, well, he also wants a contract that's going to basically establish a new precedent for tight ends. With that in mind, what's your best guess? And I've been talking about this for a couple of days now about the end game here, because if he's looking to establish a new market, there's no guarantee that Kwesi, who's not exactly giving out contracts like candy, which Spielman sort of did, there's no guarantee that he's going to get what he wants, which means there's no guarantee that there's a new contract by September 10th. If that's not the case, what's your best guess about the end game with TJ Hockenson? Does he just extend the I don't feel well enough to play act? Does this all end at some point? What's the goal here if we don't have a contract, let's say on September 9th?
Well, I think he's out there on September 10th, so that in that case, he'll suck it up. He'll play with the hope that it's not impossible to carry extension talks into the season. I get it. Many teams, many agents don't like to do it once the regular season starts, but it's not against the rules. So you could extend talks beyond, in your case, September 9th. I just know that both sides have been motivated to get a deal done. I don't deny what Diana has. I mean, heck, she was at Vikings camp last Thursday. So she's been here in Eagan. She has great sources. I guess it would be comparable to the numbers we tossed out, Judd. Phil, you weren't here on Tuesday, but we tossed out some numbers on Tuesday. 4 years, $64 million. With $40 to $41 million guaranteed. That would reset the market. George Kittle, Declan, correct me if I'm wrong, George Kittle, about $40 million guaranteed. Mark Andrews, mid-30s. Dallas Goedert, mid-30s. Cole Kmet, his extension with the Bears a few weeks ago, $32 million guaranteed. Now, ultimately, do I see the Vikings committing $40 to $41 million guaranteed to TJ Hockenson? I guess I will be surprised. You're right, Judd. I mean, so far, has Kwesi signed anyone to a contract extension? We know the Jefferson extension is coming, but there's just no evidence to suggest that he'd be willing to do something like that. So I think Neil Cornrich, TJ Hockenson will have to come off that cliff. What they're seeking, come down a little bit, meet somewhere in the middle. I'd still like to think that in the end, they eventually sign Hockenson to an extension.
So I'm just going to throw a question out here, right? Just pontificating here. So Kwesi's been in that seat for a year and a half. I think we all agree the Hockenson trade, getting a top 5 pass catching tight end for a second round pick, we all like that trade. I do have some questions about, all right, so you make that trade. He has, as predicted, a really good second half of the season. He's primed to have probably 1,000-yard season this year. Like, what did you expect going into contract talks? Of course, he's going to want $40 million guaranteed, but let's put that transaction aside for a second. What is Kwesi's second best move that he's made in a year and a half?
I'm thinking his second best move. Ooh. Drafting Brian Asamoah?
By the way, we have an update on that. Judd went straight to Brian.
I went and talked to him.
And asked him, hey, the team has your pronunciation this way. How do you want your name pronounced?
Asamoah, right?
Asamoah. Yeah,
Asamoah.
He stopped. In fact, he blew me off because I was trying to talk to him coming off the field 2 days ago because he took part in the walkthrough. Now, he did not take part in the joint practice. And I think those guys are told don't talk if you're hurt. But I said, okay, just tell me one thing. For the love of God, how do you pronounce your last name? And he said Asamoah.
There you go.
So I'm now a pronunciation guide guy. Like this is
TikTok,
what 11
TikTok
years
and pronunciations. That's
11 years into broadcast into actual just full-time podcasting, radio stuff. I am now seeking out pronunciations. Awesome.
Well, good work.
What he said.
So I will toss out Brian Asamoah. Now, I think it has a chance to eventually be Byron Murphy Jr. Or Jordan Addison. But
Marcus
in this
Davenport.
moment, when you present that question to me, like I pause. Like, is it somebody else? I mean, instantly, though, Asamoah is the name that comes to mind.
Yeah. Judd, I mean, I'm not like out on Kwesi. I want to give Kwesi a full second season, but I don't know.
Here's the thing about that question that makes it difficult, and we talked about this a lot last year. They didn't make any real changes. So like ordinarily you come in a year one, right? And you shake things up a little bit. And, that's when Kendricks goes or Thielen goes, or that's when moves are made or guys are signed. But because you stayed and won 13 games, because you stayed with the status quo for a year, right now it's hard to answer that question because I feel like it's a rarity for a front office that is newly in charge to stand pat, but they stood pat. So I think in fairness, I'm much more concerned about how his draft classes are trending. But as far as like his moves go, free agents and trades and things like that, it's such a small sample size because of their philosophy, which again, I always go back to, I think was the Wilfs philosophy, which is we want you to see if you can win with this current team. And they proved that they could, at least in the regular season.
I'll give you one more. What about convincing Harrison Smith to take the significant pay cut? Now, I get it. There's more to it than that. Harrison likes it here, like so many people in the organization. But there was money to be had elsewhere. Now, I do think in the end, he'll make more money here in 2023 than he would have made elsewhere. But there was still some convincing that had to be done. And I still think Harrison Smith has at least one good year left in him. And for whatever it's worth, because I don't know how to quantify this, but when speaking with Josh Metellus, Cam Bynum, Byron Murphy Jr., others in the secondary, they always point to the quiet leadership, but still leadership of Harrison Smith, that he's a difference maker. I know how smart the man is. He doesn't always show it to us. In fact, he rarely shows it to us on camera. Like when I interview him on camera, he's very reserved. But I'm positive he is different behind the scenes. So many guys gravitate toward Harrison Smith. So what about that move?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It's an interesting, once you move past the Hockenson thing, it's like we're kind of waiting for, all right, what's next? What's the next big move? What's the next big, he's tried to buy low on some former first and second round draft picks, kind of waiting for that to come to fruition. So I don't know. Speaking of buying low, by the way, Doogie, we want your thoughts on this. So Ian Rappaport, there's the guys like Ian Rappaport, the big NFL national breaking news guys. They don't offer their opinion. But Ian Rappaport put out, like, if they offer an opinion, it's rooted in some sort of report or fact. Someone told them something and now they're framing it differently. He had a very interesting, carefully worded tweet yesterday. As the 49ers weigh options for Trey Lance, calling his hometown team, the Vikings, who were a rumored destination before the draft, makes sense. Nothing is impossible, but Minnesota has a backup in Nick Mullins and drafted a quarterback in Jaren Hall. Post-draft, these deals are harder to make. But this is a rare opinion tweet from Ian Rappaport. I don't think he's just like, oh, I'm bored. I'm going to log on and throw a takeout about Trey Lance, right? This seems rooted in some sort of information behind the scenes. So what do you make? I mean, Trey Lance lost out to Sam Darnold for the backup job. I don't think it's going to take a first-round pick to get him anymore if you're interested in reviving his career. But what do you think?
Yeah, I'm not even sure it takes a day 2 pick, right? I mean, I would think it's a day 3 pick. Heck, how high a day 3 pick? Is it more like a 5th or 6th, or is it a 4th? But certainly a day 3 pick. All right, well, let's go back to April. What did we discuss in April? We discussed this possibility that there was dialogue, that Kwesi, his tight relationship with John Lynch, others in the 49ers front office, that there was legitimate chatter. I can't tell you exactly how far that chatter got pre-draft, but the Vikings absolutely had dialogue with the 49ers in April. I believe what we said then, paraphrasing a bit, but what we said then was, hey, let's see how this situation plays out. Okay, so he doesn't get dealt pre-draft. Let's see if he can beat out Sam Darnold. Or let's see how Brock Purdy comes back from Tommy John surgery. Maybe that's prolonged, right? So maybe Trey Lance has a chance to win the number 2 or even the number 1 job July into August. Well, as we sit here now on August 24th, we know the end game. He didn't. Sam Darnold beat him out. Brock Purdy is okay. Brock Purdy starter, Darnold backup, Trey Lance sitting there as the number 3. Now, the Niners know all about needing a third quarterback. So ultimately, do they move Lance? But I do think his representation, Creative Arts Agency, one of the big agencies, he's got some high-powered agents, that they are interested in finding Trey Lance a new landing spot. So if we want to connect some logical dots based on that pre-draft dialogue, yes, I imagine the Vikings will once again show interest. Now, to what extent will they be the only team? Doesn't mean the Vikings are going to complete a trade for Trey Lance, but I absolutely, Judd, believe the Vikings will once again reach out to the 49ers.
So a few things at work here. One is actually San Francisco has 3 QBs because they also have Brandon Allen, who they like a lot, behind Darnold. Trey Lance also, so Shanahan, I believe Kyle did, went on KNBR in San Francisco, the radio station out there, after this decision was made, and talked about, we still like him, but he sounded like a guy who's intent. He sounds like a guy who's talked to Trey Lance, and Trey Lance says, I want out. And I think Kyle's like, yeah, that's probably smart. Trey Lance also, it just so happens, wasn't even at San Francisco's practice yesterday. So they basically said, he either said, I'm going home, or they said, go home. So all of this leads me to believe that he's going to be dealt here fairly quickly. What makes the Vikings interesting is a few things, but the thing that I keep going back to is, one, the price tag now, because I'm guessing in the spring around the draft, the price tag was a far different price tag. And I'm guessing the Vikings said, we're not going to pay you that. That's crazy. This guy at best is a developmental guy. You screwed up, not us. But if you look at what the Vikings are doing, Jaron Hall, the quarterback that they just signed, Tamu, correct?
Tamu.
Yeah, Jordan Tamu. Almost was a Gopher way back when.
And who I don't think he's going to be around for long. But the fact is, Trey Lance fits into the mold of these guys that are mobile, that can move, that can throw. And so I think that and look, I'm not, just to be very clear here, I'm not saying I think Trey Lance is good. I have no idea, and I wouldn't give you much for him. Do I think the Vikings are going to be tempted? Absolutely, especially if San Francisco will pick up some of the salary. And as we talked about, Doogs, on Purple Daily yesterday, there's another important thing here too, and that is if you make this trade now, which is what, year 3 of Trey Lance, but when his contract comes up, you're not going to have to break the bank here. You probably won't even pick up his 5th-year option. It'll probably be a Jordan Love thing where you extend him if you keep him, but on a new contract that's reasonable for you. So I just think that there's a lot of interesting tentacles here that make Trey Lance a potential fit for what O'Connell wants to develop.
I just wonder, now, Judd, you would know more than I, but the third quarterback, so let's say this comes to fruition. Well, Nick Mullins isn't going anywhere, so he's the number 2 as far as I know. Like, I'll be surprised if they jettison Nick Mullins, they bring in Trey Lance, instantly Trey Lance is the number 2. So during the regular season, how many snaps on a per-week basis in practice does the number 3 quarterback get outside of running scout team? So how hard is it in season to develop a guy like Trey Lance? Now, I get it. You'd have next offseason as well. The salary cap number is reasonable for the next couple years. You're right. I mean, you don't exercise the 5th-year option. You'd work out something else. That's down the road. But I'm just wondering, yes, do I think Kevin O'Connell would be intrigued to have a chance to develop, have a chance to see if he can have Trey Lance come close to reaching his ceiling? Yeah, I think there's some interest there. I do, right? But I just wonder how much work can be done in the regular season. What sort of hurdle is that?
Yeah. No, it's a good point. Excuse me. I think most of the development comes in all the reps you get from like May all the way through the preseason games. I would say this too, for if in today's NFL, people always point to like, Aaron Rodgers sat for 3 years and these old examples. In today's NFL, the way that there's so much more processing in college and off season. There's so many more tools for quarterbacks to get sort of mental reps or VR reps, right? If you play like a year and a half as a first round pick and you are nowhere near being a starting caliber quarterback, you're probably a bust in today's NFL. With an exception, Trey Lance is the interesting exception because his high school graduating class was 2018. 2018. Since graduating high school, he has thrown about 450 passes total across college and the NFL. In college, by the way, he wasn't playing, Big Ten SEC competition every week. So I like that's why I'm still like if it was anyone else, if this was a guy who played, 3-year starter in a Power 5 conference and he comes in and after a year and a half or 2 years, it's like it's not clicking for him. Christian Ponder. Come on, dude. You played in the ACC, Florida State. You got a bunch of reps your first year, second year, it's not clicking. You're a bust. Trey Lance is still interesting because he just hasn't had reps, right? I'm not saying give him reps, he's going to be a star, but you kind of put him in a different bin than you would put other first round quarterbacks that you would label a bust, in my opinion.
Yeah, no. I think that's plenty fair. I mean, you think about the COVID year, 2020, last year. You're right, Phil. It's a good reminder of how few snaps he has actually taken. I don't know if you have the specific numbers in front of you, but yeah, go back. Okay, played a lot, 2019, but 2020, not so much.
One game, 2021 game.
Yeah, one game in 2020?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's just, you're right. I'm just telling you, the Vikings had interest in April. I don't see how that would change now. So I think there's going to be some exploration done. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but I will be surprised if the Vikings don't at least inquire once again.
Since he graduated high school, he has less than 600 pass attempts in college, NFL regular season, NFL preseason.
And preseason. Wow.
DTR, for example, has over 1,200.
Yeah, the UCLA
1,400. Yeah, 1,400 passing attempts.
The 2020 game was the showcase just for him. They basically canceled the season and then said we'll play a game for scouts. So that was a game that was like put on as an exhibition game for Trey Lance's benefit. So yeah, I mean this kid, and look, he got hurt. He didn't play. San Francisco. I see Shanahan's taking heat now. Well, he couldn't develop this kid. He's, and he's the great quarterback whisperer, blah, blah, blah. But the circumstances are weird. I'm just saying, I don't think you can eliminate this as a possibility. Hey, Doogs, I've got, if we can move on from Trey Lance, I got the last thing that strikes me, because it's just sort of been backburnered completely and forgotten. What do we know about Justin Jefferson's contract extension? Because like the price tag every day that we wake up and that news is not out there that he has signed that, the price tag on this sucker goes up. So what do we know about that? Because I feel like, he showed up for camp. He's going through all the drills. So he's been no problem at all. But this is a contract that needs to be taken care of. And I think a lot of us thought that by this point, there was a very good chance Hockenson and Jefferson's contracts would be resolved, and both aren't. So what do we know about Jefferson's contract? Because I'm guessing once the regular season starts, they're not going to have a ton of talks.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the Vikings world, Judd, the Hockenson and Jefferson extensions would be done by here on August 24th. It's a reminder of what you laid out a month ago, or going back further. It's a complicated negotiation. On top of that, the Jefferson camp is still awaiting what takes place with Nick Bosa with the Niners, because Nick Bosa will become, in that moment, if you believe Bosa signs before Jefferson, he's holding out right now. Mm-hmm. So you would think at some point here, the Niners plan on having Bosa for the start of the regular season. Now, he's a physical freak. I'm sure he's in shape, but he hasn't been in Niners camp. But when he does sign, I imagine it's going to happen. It's when, not if. Bosa will become the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. Well, the idea then is Justin Jefferson soon after, at some point, would trump that contract. He would become the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. So it's guaranteed money. It's complicated. It just is, right? And, let's remind everybody, Kwesi's yet to give out one of these contract extensions, right? So what exactly is going on internally in Egan? I still think it's going to happen, but I guess I just don't sense, Judd, it's on the cusp of happening. That we'll have news on September 9th or the morning of September 10th that 2 extensions have been worked out. Maybe 1, but I'll be surprised if there are 2 done by the start of the regular season.
Hey, before we get into the rest of Doogie's scoop bag here, a couple shout outs. We're going to shout ourselves out actually first. If you go to scorenorth.com/shop, you now see 2 different wings. We got the merchandise you can click on, your Victory Monday hoodies, your Before I Die swag. There's a new Flagrant Howls t-shirt. And then there's a collectibles link that you can click on. And thanks to our friends at Universal Sports Auctions, it takes you to the glorious page of sports merchandise, signed, authenticated. In fact, we received a list a couple days ago of the most popular items that you guys, the audience, have purchased so far here. And the Justin Jefferson one-handed catch where he's jumping up in Buffalo, one hand between 3 defenders. There is a signed framed photo. That's the most popular item so far. You can buy it right now. Scorenorth.com/shop. Click on collectibles. Use the promo code SCORE to save 10% on all products site-wide. So thank you for partaking in this. We just wanted to bring some cool things to you, courtesy of our friends, or I guess via our friends at Universal Sports Auctions. And also a shout out to our friends at Power Lodge and Miller Marine. I know this is the state fair kind of signal. It's the end of summer or whatever. Hogwash. There's still plenty of great weather, plenty of great weekends, and there's plenty of great pontoons, Bennington pontoons, at your local Power Lodge or Miller Marine in St. Cloud. Throttle therapy is still in play here, Judd. Look at Judd's biceps right there with that fishing pole, by the way.
Oh, and I'm doing backflips into the water. I mean, it is unbelievable. You talk about a freak athlete. Forget Justin Jefferson. It's sports dad right here. But yes.
Oh, yeah.
The Viking season is about to start. How do you get the rest and relaxation that you so richly deserve before this team starts to drive you up the wall, hopefully win a lot of football games? Throttle therapy. So, yes, Miller Marine Power Lodge. Get out on that Bennington and enjoy.
Yeah, powerlodge.com, millermarine.com. All right, Dukes, what else do you have in your scoops bag for us?
Well, one more on the Vikings. So as we approach next Tuesday, cut down day, I will put the over-under on Vikings trades made at 0.5. Maybe I should go higher, but 0.5, I will take the over. So I think at least one trade doesn't necessarily mean Trey Lance. Heck, it might be somebody going out from here for some sort of conditional 7th-round draft pick in a year or 2. But I just think at least one trade is coming in the next handful of days. All right, let's go back to Tuesday. Declan, that Bill Simmons tweet saying, hey, if you're Dame Lillard, right, look at what Ant is doing with Team USA. Dame, come to your senses. Forget Miami. You need to be in Minnesota. Karl Anthony Towns to Portland. Form this threesome with Rudy Gobert, Anthony Edwards, yourself. Okay? So I said there's just no sense the Wolves are actually entertaining such an idea. Plus, I have a hard time believing that Damian Lillard would embrace a move here to Minnesota. Here is one more tentacle. If you want to call it reckless speculation, fine. The Portland Trailblazers are not
let's make sure let's label this properly.
Reckless speculation.
Yeah.
There is no sense that the Portland Trailblazers are actually interested in Karl Anthony Towns. Right? So let's start there. I don't sense that there's a lot of trade interest league-wide right now in Cat.
Yeah.
Now, I think he'll have a rebound year in many ways. That's why I continue to think that next June can be very fascinating. That his guy Leon in New York, others with the Knicks, that the Knicks would have some interest. Heck, Dallas at different points, depending on how this next season goes. Does Dallas blow things up? There's some other possibilities as well. Maybe Toronto, right? I can go through a few teams, maybe Chicago, but certainly New York. But like right now, I just don't sense there's a lot of cat trade interest. Now, if he plays well for the Dominican here in the FIBA World Cup, which ramps up this weekend, he maintains his health throughout the regular season. I think the Wolves are going to have a good year, right? We can have a different conversation come either the trade deadline or next June. But right now, in this moment, I'm just telling you, coming off the chatter we had on Tuesday, I just don't sense, I don't say this lightly, I just don't sense there's a lot of cat trade interest across the league right now.
And that makes sense for a few reasons. Number one, the guy missed, 50 plus games with an injury. In the 29 games he did play in the regular season, analytically, if you want to look at like win shares, player efficiency rating, it was one of his worst seasons from that standpoint. He was also being asked to do a lot of different things compared to maybe, the first handful of years in the league. So he was being asked to adjust more than almost anyone. And I've been hard on him more than anyone, but I will give him that. And then there's also, the Wolves fought their asses off in that first round series against the Nuggets, and he had a couple big games. But the gap between him and the other elite bigs, between him and Jokic, between him and Embiid, is so much more pronounced than it was a couple years ago that if I'm a potential buyer, I want to see, can you come back, stay healthy for at least 70 games? Can you get back to maybe where we thought you were going to be a couple years ago? And then maybe we can entertain some trade discussions. Now, the thing is, if he gets back to that level, do the Wolves want to keep him? Would they look to keep it all together in some way, even though they're fighting against the second luxury tax apron? There's a lot to figure out in the next 10 months for the Wolves.
Correct. That's why next summer, I'm telling you, has a chance to be very, very fascinating. But I do think the Wolves are going to be good. But you think about $262 million. Remind me, I think there's a trade kicker in Cat's contract, right? So that adds another layer. That's a lot for another team to absorb. Yeah. But yeah, if he has a good year, a good bounce back year, that changes things. But right now, I'm just telling you, like across the league, not that the Wolves were going to move him, but I sense they at least took the temperature of a lot of the league. I just don't think they got a whole lot of positive feedback. I really don't.
Yeah, interesting. Final scoops, Judd. What do you got?
I got a Twins thing for you because I saw something out of Milwaukee, I believe, a couple days ago. Story, and I think the Star Tribune, Athletic, and probably Pioneer Press as well. To credit everyone across the board. Are we really looking at torturing where we're playing guys to get Byron Buxton in the lineup as a DH now? Now they're like, well, when he comes back, we're not quite sure. Edward Julian has been working at first base. In the blowout loss to the Brewers a couple days ago, he actually got into a game late there. But then I saw this entire story about how we might be having to move guys around to accommodate Buxton. Stop me if I'm wrong here, but is this not a recipe for playoff disaster, trying to play guys at positions at which they might not be familiar just to make it work for like Buxton? This sounds idiotic to me. Play people where they're comfortable. Edward Julian can barely play second base. What on God's green earth makes you think that he can play first base? And we're doing this for a guy who is, look, God bless him, tries his hardest. Byron Buxton, I don't question his work ethic at all, right? But he has been injured and he has not had a great year by any means. What are we doing here? Why are we doing this? And I saw that and I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be Edward Julian. It's someone's going to bunt. He's going to field the ball and he's going to throw it into the right field stands by accident. Idiotic.
I have a hard time believing, Judd, in the end, that Eddie Julian is playing any meaningful innings at first base. In a blowout loss on Tuesday night in Milwaukee, I mean, it was close until, Dylan Floro, BABIP'd to death, right? Not like he was giving up a lot of hard contact, but yeah, that game snowballed innings 7, 8, 9 after that sixth inning. Okay, chance to get Julian in for an inning, or maybe it was 2 at first base. On Tuesday, October 3rd, game 1, whether it's the Blue Jays at the Twins, the Astros, the Rangers, the Rays, the Mariners. Heck, right now it looks like it might be the Mariners, although they may move from 6 to 5 pretty quick, right? The way Texas is failing right now. Whoever it is, Rangers, Mariners, Blue Jays, at Twins, Tuesday, October 3rd, Eddie Julian is going to be the DH. He just is, right? Polanco at second, Royce Lewis at third. Yeah, okay, we can question whether Buxton is in the field or not. Is he playing center or is it Michael A. Taylor? Is it Ryan Jefferson catching? He should. Or is it Christian Vasquez? But I'm just telling you, like, Eddie Julian is not. Judd, I have a hard time believing. Maybe this is reckless speculation. Fine. But, like, Eddie Julian's not going to be in the field for a playoff game. I'm sorry. It's just that can't happen.
The opening October 3rd, I'm with you completely. I don't think anyone's that stupid. But what I'm saying is, what about October 4th in the 6th inning when somebody potentially gets cute? That's my concern. Like Eddie Julian, they're working him at first base. And what concerns me here is the temptation then, because they definitely have this philosophy of, oh, it's positionless baseball. We could play this guy here and that guy there. And sometimes it works, but sometimes it's a disaster. Do I trust the Twins? That's the real question here. The answer is
seems
no.
like you have some justifiable trust issues here that you're working through. And that's
I get it. Is it possible it's just some sort of insurance policy in the event that you feel better if Alex Kirilloff's shoulder doesn't heal? Now, Kirilloff has told us he fully believes he will be back before the season is over. That Kirilloff, in his mind, will be okay to play first base on October 3rd. But is it possible if the shoulder doesn't heal in time that you would feel better in a game one against Kevin Gossman or Luis Castillo, or you name the right-handed starting pitcher, that you would feel better about Julian in the lineup than Donovan Solano? Thus, maybe you would see Julian at first base. I'm just going on the idea. Now, maybe I shouldn't trust Kirilloff with his injury history, but he knows his body better than anyone, that he has been telling people close to him that I am not done for the season. So I'm just basing my intel, my info, on the belief that Kirilloff will be back. Now, it might still be 3 or 4 weeks, that he'll be back in time for the playoffs.
All right. Doogs, any final scoops before we say goodbye here today?
Yeah, one quickly on Gophers football. So I'm heading out to the fair to catch up with Ethan Kelly-McManus, some other players in a little bit. But 1 week from today, the opener, Gophers, Nebraska, Huntington Bank Stadium. The Gophers anticipate a sellout. I think I mentioned that on Tuesday. So it's trending in the direction of all tickets being sold. Thank you, Nebraska Cornhuskers Nation. But the Gophers still await word on Minneapolis native, former Minnehaha Academy star Craig McDonald. The transfer from Auburn started his collegiate career at Iowa State, then had his one-time transfer to Auburn. Well, he's now a Gopher. Transferred from Auburn to Minnesota. Can play nickelback, safety, even a little linebacker. He is still awaiting word from the NCAA. Will he have immediate eligibility? He is still awaiting word on the waiver. The Gophers all along have been optimistic that they will get good news. But I checked again last night, still no word. Maybe it comes today, tomorrow, or Monday. I can't imagine it goes much beyond Monday, but the Gophers remain optimistic. The NCAA can do weird stuff, but the Gophers remain optimistic that Craig McDonald will be able to play 1 week from tonight.
There he is. What a great Thursday scoop session here. A little reckless speculation, some inside information. We pretty much hit all the bases here. So thank you, Doogie.
You got it, boys. Take it easy. I'll see you, Judd, later today.
You will.
All right. Darren Doogie Wolfson. And by the way, if you want to see Judd's angst in person at Target Field, you can get tickets to an upcoming Twins game. All right, they've got 7 consecutive home games starting tonight against the Texas Rangers, 4 against the Rangers, 3 against the Gardos. And then they go on the road against the Rangers and the Gardos. But the Yankees are coming to town, the reeling, depleted Yankees in early September, and some other home games too. Quins.com/tickets, Quins.com/tickets.
That's the Mets. The Mets. It's not the Yankees. It's even worse. It's the Mets.
Yeah, Yankees
you're right.
already.
I'm sorry. Yeah, the Yankees are already here. My bad. The reeling. Replace everything I said with
It doesn't matter.
With Mets.
Mets.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. It doesn't matter.
They're both going to fire a bunch of people and
Exactly.
light a bunch of dollar bills on fire. So, all right, there's your inside information about your favorite Minnesota sports teams here on this Thursday scoop and reckless speculation session.